We've been doing this series that I entitle These Things Matter. You can put so many things under that title, I understand. So we had to make some choice. And I chose this one to talk on hospitality. I'm going to show you what happened for some of us 2 weeks ago. When we went to PNG, hospitality over there is on another level. And this is one of the events that will forever stay in my mind and in our mind. We went to this village, predominantly Adventist village, called Vancouver. And members of that village did so much to feel us welcome. They've never seen us before, and they spent the whole morning. We came around 12 o'clock, and they spent the whole morning preparing food and in expectation of us coming. So we came, and they strategically placed themselves within our group. So one of the locals would sit with us and then tell us about the village, tell us about the way of life, tell us about how the Adventism came into that village, and then fed us, obviously. It was in a pot, and don't ask me what was in the pot. But it was something we could eat. Okay, we won't go into details, but today we are talking about hospitality. And I know for certain that this is something that will stay forever in our mind. To just experience hospitality from a perfect stranger. And when a perfect stranger becomes a guest, and when a guest becomes a friend, and when a friend becomes a family, that's what hospitality is all about. You agree with that? Let's read a Bible text. This is from the book of Hebrews, chapter 13, from verse 1. Keep on loving each another as brothers/sisters. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing, some people have entertained angels without knowing it. Remember those in prison as if you were their fellow prisoners, and those who were mistreated as if you yourself were suffering. And then out in the same breath, and you wonder what is the connection. Marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure, for God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, what? Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So today we'll talk and focus on hospitality. Look at the bigger picture and also the context for what we've just read. We'll look at the God's idea about hospitality. So it stems from the mind of God rather than the product of a human mind. And number 3, the power behind the Christian hospitality. Let me repeat once again what I read, and you'll see why. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing, some people have entertained angels without knowing it. Remember those in prison as if you were their fellow prisoners, and those who are mistreated as if you yourselves were suffering. Marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure, for God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral. Kind of, as I read, I guess if you paid attention, you would see that there are two parts of a text. The one that is talking about hospitality on one hand, and the other one that is talking about the sanctity of marriage. And Paul, almost in the same breath, is talking about both things, which made me think about culture today. And we as Christians fitting within this culture. And in this culture, the liberal value is, and it coincides kind of with what we as Christians believe, and that is that there should be an emphasis on people who are on margin, destitutes, poor, strangers, foreigners, refugees. It's a big battle out there in the culture that we are part of. And one of the things that the liberals especially put forward is this idea of taking care of those who are on the margins. And mind you, as you read the text that we have just read, Paul is saying, yes, that's who Christians are. That's who we are, and that's what we need to do. But in the same breath, Paul is saying this. And this is very much a conservative value. Think about it. God will judge adulterer and the sexually immoral. And the first Christian church upheld marriage and the sanctity of marriage. And when you think a little deeper about it, the reason for it, the biblical way behind which is the design of God for who man and woman is and what marriage is, that is the only one that makes society prosper, society flourish, and community to be taken care of. Any other extreme liberal view which is not in accord with this hits a dead end, and it's not going to work in long run. Everybody knows this. So when you think about Christianity, the true Christians are very strange for surrounding culture, as they are both liberal and conservative at the same time, or they are none. They're just Christians. So let's now focus on hospitality. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by doing so, some people have entertained angels without knowing it. There is this word, the stranger, and the Greek word used there is philoxenia or philoxenia. So this word xenos is the Greek word for a stranger or a foreigner. Paul is saying, entertain, be hospitable towards a stranger. But then you know this word, xenophobia, which is the fear of strangers, people who are of different culture. Well, fresh in my memory is our trip to Papua New Guinea. And for some of the youth who have gone there, this was the very first time that they have crossed to another country. But for many of them, the experience would have been quite into their face, because it's a different culture, different way of life, different food, different customs. So much is different. So when it happens like that, you kind of stand back and you have to soak it in. And I observed how slowly but surely things changed. And a stranger became a friend. A friend became a brother. As I shared of my life, and they shared of their life, and as I participated in their life, and they participated in our lives, things changed. It was so difficult to say goodbye. Stranger, foreigner. And there's so much fear of those who are different. Paul is saying, entertain strangers. Be hospitable to them. Love for people who are different from you. Don't put up fences. Build the bridges. Some people have entertained strangers, not being aware of it. So what was Paul referring to? And we heard in a story. It comes from the book of Genesis, chapter 18. It is reference to what happened when 3 strangers came to Abraham He's never seen them before. And being a hospitable person, he entertained them. He brought them in. He washed their feet. He gave them food. And he sent them on their journey. Totally oblivious to the fact that these were angels. Totally oblivious to the fact that one of them was not just an angel. He was the Lord himself. Totally oblivious to the fact, but just hospitable. So to understand a hospitality, especially from ancient times, we need to understand a couple of things. Traveling in the ancient times was very difficult and very dangerous. There were no hotels. There were no motels. There were some inns. But by and large, it was vastly different from what we experience and from what we know. People did not move much in the ancient times. So traveling was impossible if somebody would not be hospitable to you. So therefore, in ancient times, hospitality was kind of must. It was inbuilt in culture. But that was the only way how you can help a stranger who went on a journey and maybe needed to do a commerce, or for whatever reason he would go across the border from his tribe to another tribe, or from one country to another country. The ancient hospitality had 4 parts to it. The first one was invitation, the second was safety, and the third provision, and another one departure. So when you look at the Bible, you find this. A traveler would come to a city gate and wait there. Or there could have been a well. And just wait there. And the people who were insiders, so people who were locals, potentially by the way they looked, the stranger looked and what they wore, they realized that this is a stranger, a foreigner, person who is not from this place. So they would wait for the mercy and grace of somebody to say, come, you'll stay in my place today. Perfect stranger. And if you invited that stranger, you would have to strike a conversation and be shrewd enough to realize and discover that this is not an enemy. And it will be at your discretion and at your wisdom to know that the person that you are talking to is safe enough that you would invite him under your roof. And so you would. And then, if you would invite them, you would provide for them. You would wash their feet, which was quite interesting, eh? And then you would give them to eat. And then you would give them lodging. Typically, they would stay not more than 2 days, and then you would say goodbye. In a nutshell, that was hospitality in ancient times. But the heart of it, when you think about it, is expediency. In other words, people needed to go beyond the borders of their tribes or even their nations to do important jobs, whatever they were. And so if somebody needed to do that, and you knew that you had to sometimes do exactly that, expediency, because you did it, they do it, hospitality became part of life in ancient times. You do it for others, they do it for you, it's for expediency's sake. But what about God's people? At Mount Sinai, God presented the vision for hospitality for Israel as his community. This is what God said. I am the great God. I am not partial and I take no bribes. I execute justice for the orphan and the widow. I love the stranger. That's a strong word. Providing him with food and clothing, you too shall love the strangers and the alien and the wanderer. And then he adds something that is extremely important. He says it's not the expediency, but because you yourselves were the strangers in the land of Egypt. God puts up another notch, the reason for being hospitable. He said, you as a nation, for 350 years, you were strangers and foreigners in the land that you were in. Imagine living in a country for 350 years, generation after generation after generation, and being foreigner, and being treated as a foreigner in that country. Not only as a foreigner, but as a slave. God said, remember that. Remember that. And then I came. And after many miracles that I performed, I brought you home. And no longer are you a foreigner or a stranger. Now, what I've done is provide a motivation for you to do the same. Foreigner needs to become a guest. Guest needs to become a friend. Friend needs to become a family member. That's hospitality. Oops. That's hospitality. So let's get into the idea and unpack this a little more. God's idea of hospitality. So remember, we said in ancient world, the reason for hospitality was expediency. But for his people, it was way more than that. It's not just you scratch my back, I scratch yours. And that's how it works. God says it's more than that. It's more than that. I rescued you, I clothed you, I fed you, I provided for you, I brought you home, and you are no longer strangers, you're no longer slaves, you live only by my hospitality and by my salvation. It's not what God said, it's what God did, and he said, do exactly the same what I did. That's hospitality. What about Christian church? If we have been saved by God's grace, then we are recipients of his hospitality. Therefore, because you were strangers, you were aliens, wanderers, and I saved you by my hospitality, you are to do the same to others. Simple as that. Well, let's let the rubber hit the road. To take somebody out for a cuppa, or to invite them to your place, and to welcome them, and then to listen to their problems, that's what hospitality is. You don't have to be a counselor and a specialist to precisely answer the problems that people have. All you need to have is an open heart, ears that want to listen, and listen to a person. And God says, by doing that, you entertain angel. Did you catch that? Something as simple as a cuppa is entertaining angels. Is it really that simple? Well, that's what Paul is saying in the book of Hebrews. In other words, the essence of hospitality is being recipient, in the first place, of God's hospitality in my life as a huge motivation. And then, in turn, the recipient turns into a conduit of that same hospitality towards another. After being saved, we become recipients of God's hospitality. And when we practice hospitality, we become conduits of God's hospitality. So how are you going? How are we going? Are you the one? You and I are the recipients of God's grace, of God's salvation, and therefore, by default, we are, as Christians, to be hospitable. There is no such a thing, Christian but non-hospitable. Just impossible. Because as you become a recipient, you become a conduit. The joy of God's hospitality dies if it does not flourish in our hospitality to others. Doesn't it? So here are some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves as the people of God. How can I draw people into a deep experience of God's hospitality by the use of what I have? Money, home, talents, church, whatever. How can I make use of it for the sake of doing exactly what God did? Bring me in so that I can also bring others in. Who at this moment needs help in the battle against loneliness, discouragement, depression? Look around. Think. You'll be reminded. Don't push it away. Give them a call. Send an email. Send SMS. Thinking of you. Shall we catch up for a cuppa? Let's get together. Haven't seen you for a long time. It's time. So who needs your hospitality now? Write it down. When the church finishes, give them a call. SMS them. Extend a hand. Invite them next week to catch up. How can my skills and my talents benefit the real needs of people now? In which practical way can I be hospitable to someone or a group of people now? This is important. If you practice radical hospitality, you will always notice someone on the outside. Or someone who is not part of the inner circle. Our church is typically pretty full. Today we are missing quite a number of our families, especially adventurer families. But when you come to church, almost every single time you will see a new face. But if you see that face again, and kind of you don't see that anybody is approaching them, what are you doing? Why don't you do it? Remember, stranger becomes a guest. Guest becomes a friend. Friend becomes a family member. That's how it works. You see, the easy way we sometimes at the back of our mind think, and what we often do, especially in a big church, is we organize a big evangelistic campaign. And we look for the newcomers that come. And you know what we think will happen? A perfect stranger becomes a family member in a matter of a short time. No. It doesn't happen. You cannot skip the process. It doesn't work. Somebody becomes a family member through a normal process, but a stranger becomes a guest. And guests you need to invite to your home. Invite them for a cuppa. Bring them into your life so that the stranger becomes a guest. That's inconvenient. It takes your time, it takes your energy, maybe sometimes even money. A bit of sacrifice. But that's what happens. And then they become friends. Then friends become a family. That's a hospitality. So what is hospitality? It's the attitude of heart, primarily. When you look around and you see people on the outside, and you know for a fact that they are outside, that this is not their environment. They are like fish outside of the water. And you say, no, that can't happen. That can't happen. One of the good things that I have loved about the youth of our church is that what has happened among the youth is that they were looking. I knew a person would come and they would say, hey, you can't stay a stranger. You need to become part of us. Come inside. Come inside. It's an attitude of heart. It's an attitude of heart. Before we do anything, it's your eyes that see that there is a fish that is outside of water. And they can't stay outside. They need to get in. It's not just an attitude of heart, but it is also a practice of heart. It's a practice of heart. It seeks to turn, and I mention it again and again, strangers into guests, and then guests into friends, and friends into family. But there's also a focus of hospitable heart. And the special focus is on those who are marginalized. Sometimes it's easy to get in a person who is from another church, or they know Adventist culture, they know how things work, and so that process of getting in is not difficult. But what if person is poor? Different color of skin, not connected, shy, sick, different than any of us. God says a special focus needs to be on them. These are the ones. They need to become guests. They need to become friends. They need to become part of a family. You were strangers, foreigners, wanderers, slaves. I brought you in. I brought you in. Now go out, do the same. Have eyes that see people on the margin. Bring them in. Bring them in. That's what the first Christian church was known for. They turned the Roman world upside down because it was not normal in the Roman culture that people would be treated as those who have the image of God. Because Christians treated every person as somebody who is made in the image of God. If you are poor, if you are sick, if you're of another culture, doesn't matter. You're my brother. You're my sister. We have a common father. So therefore you are in. That was so foreign to Romans. And the first Christians turned the world upside down through their hospitality. How come? Because God came, became a human being into foreign land. Brought us in. Extended grace. And he says, do the same. Do the same. So it's a practice of heart. People come to your home, spend time with you, and sometimes, even financially, you need to help. It's a sacrifice. It's not convenient. That's what it is. So let's just share a couple of practical ways to do hospitality. Invite people to your home. Let stranger don't stay stranger. Let stranger does not stay stranger. Let him become a friend. Invite neighbors, colleagues, and friends to your spiritual home. That's another thing. In other words, you have already established friendship, but you know that that's not enough. You know that ultimate hospitality is spiritual hospitality. They need to become part of the family of God. Under the doorpost of a home that is Rimson red. And we just talked about it in our lessons, haven't we? That's a home. Home is a place which that doorposts have a Rimson red on it. So the ultimate goal of hospitality is to take them through that door, so that they eventually become your family through the blood of Jesus Christ. Invite them to small groups. Invite them to church worship. Say, come with me to church and join me for lunch after the church service. You have so many friends, colleagues. Remember, the process is not finished. If they are your friends, they need to come under the doorpost that is Rimson red and become the family of God. So it's costly. Time and money, inconvenience, but benefits are huge. You have new friends. You have new brothers and sisters. You are in the disciple-making business. That's what hospitality ultimately is. Disciple-making business. Host a small group in your home and watch how lives change. Volunteer with Bright Sparks, Minimart, Silver Lining, Deaconesses, visits. Many of those are involved with perfect strangers and opportunities that strangers become guests, friends. A Christian says, I was a stranger, but God took me in. Now I don't want to be worshiping with strangers. Let's finish with this, the power behind Christian hospitality. There are two great motivational resources that God gives us to encourage our hospitality. That the first motivation is from the past and another one is from the future. See how God says, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. In other words, if you have absolute certainty of God's love and God is never going to abandon you, it frees you to be hospitable. If you know that He brought you in and you are literally inside the circle, and you are fortified in that love and the assurance of who God is, that very fact can make you extend the hand and bring them in. How can we be so certain? Look at this detail. So Jesus also suffered outside the city gate. Do you remember what happened at the city gate? The stranger at the city gate was brought in. But what happened to Jesus? The one who was an insider was kicked out and killed. When Jesus died, he experienced everything opposite of what it means to be hospitable. Remember, a stranger comes near a city gate and is received in. The one who was inside was kicked outside and killed. Why? Why? Because he ultimately had to resolve the problem of home and hospitality. Once Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, we became wanderers, strangers, foreigners, outside of our home. And the only way to come back, remember? The sword at the entry of the Garden of Eden, the only way to come back is to chop your head off or to die. And Jesus knew that he would have to be the one to die to make it possible for us to go back. That's why he was cast out of the city gate to be killed. You see, for us, though we are in our homes, still it is not our home. Still it is not our home. We are all restless wanderers and refugees because of sin's curse. On the cross, Jesus was cast out of the city gate and cried, my Father, why have you forsaken me? I have become a stranger. I have become foreigner. I have become wanderer because of sins of the world. Still, Jesus says, never, ever will I leave you or forsake you. This was only possible for Jesus to say because he died for us. He took cosmic homelessness in our place. He took the exile we deserve so that God can bring us in and give us a radical hospitality. Let's finish with this text. Remember that you were separated from Christ, alienated and strangers to the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now you are no longer strangers or sojourners, but members of the household of God. That's who we are. There's another motivation for you to be a good, hospitable person, and that is the city. That is our home. That is coming for us very soon. So, let's not have strangers in this place ever. It depends on you and me. Let strangers become guests. And we need to make sure that that happens. Let guests become our friends. And let us all become a family beyond the doorpost of the shed blood of Jesus Christ. It's a challenge, but God can help you and me in that. May God bless us all. Amen.